Ismu Baraka. Assalamu alaikum. How are you guys doing? I said I was going to come live today at 3, and so I am here. And today we are going to go over and get little bit longer detail for a post that I just posted about the 10 signs of insulin resistance. This is really important. So in my research around insulin resistance, I came across a study that showed that people with diabetes, on average, when they followed a group of people, I believe it was something like 1,400 people, over a span of 2 decades, they found that signs of insulin resistance actually begin on average about 14 years before someone is actually diagnosed diabetic. This is absolutely essential information because oftentimes when people are diagnosed with diabetes, they feel like, oh no, this just came out of the blue. I thought I was fine. And it's because a lot of the most common symptoms of insulin resistance are overlooked, right? So if you are just joining me, my name is Mubaraka Ibrahim, and I am your health and happiness coach. And if you believe that physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is intertwined, and the weakness of one weakens them all, and the strengthening of one strengthens them all, then you have found your tribe. Oh, I'm looking at the birds in the bird feeder. They're making noise. Then you have found your tribe, because here on the Fit Muslim Mouth platform, what we talk about is food, faith, and fitness. And today we are particularly talking about insulin resistance. So you can scroll this profile and you can see the video that I just posted. It's a 1-minute edition of Put a Finger Down if you have these signs. So when we talk about insulin resistance, let's really quickly talk about what is insulin resistance and why it's such an important thing for you to catch before it gets to extreme levels. So insulin resistance is when your body is no longer able to effectively and efficiently produce insulin that allows energy to go into your cells. So I want you to think of it sort of like if there was a key that had to open a door, right? Every time that you take in carbohydrates, all right, it is converted into glucose and glycogen. Well, what glucose and glycogen does is it comes inside of your bloodstream, and then your body releases a hormone called insulin. Insulin actually opens up your cells that allows you to pull in the glucose so that your body can actually use it for energy. This is an important point. Why is this an important point? Because if you don't have the energy that you need, but you are overweight, it doesn't mean that you don't have energy. It means that your body is not able to convert the food that you're eating and the fat that you're storing into energy for the body. So fat is essentially stored energy. If you're overweight and you have no energy, your body cannot access the energy that is stored. That is a sign of insulin resistance. There is the key that's supposed to open up the lock is not working. So super important that to make that as a note. So when you have insulin resistance, that key that's supposed to open up the door, think of it kind of like it gets rusty and it doesn't open the door the way it's supposed to. What are some signs that that key is getting rusty before it just absolutely gets ready to break, right? When it breaks, that's when your doctor says, hey, you have diabetes. I need to put you on metformin. I need to put you on insulin, all of those things, right? And it happens. And let me also be very clear that I am specifically talking about type 2 diabetes. I am not referring to type 1 diabetes, right? Type 1 diabetes is genetic, and it actually is, it is developed in childhood. Used to be called, it can be developed via some medical conditions, but it's generally developed in childhood. So we're specifically talking about type 2 diabetes, right? Children can get type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes happens when that key, that insulin resistance, actually gets ready to break. Now, the good news is, number one, type 2 diabetes can be prevented even if you have a family history of type 2 diabetes. I personally have a family history of type 2 diabetes, so I'm super, super conscious of how my body is reacting to carbohydrates and to sugar. My mother had diabetes. She died from unmanaged diabetes for over 30 years. Her mother and her father had diabetes. I have sisters with diabetes, right? There's a really strong tendency in my family to diabetes, but that doesn't mean that I am definitely going to get diabetes. Again, when it comes to developing diabetes, it is a lifestyle disease. That means even if you have a genetic propensity towards it, it doesn't mean that you absolutely positively you're going to get it. It means that you need to be conscious of that and make sure that you don't use a lifestyle that will turn that gene on, right? Because essentially, we have the ability to control genes and how they are turned on and turned off. We don't want to turn that gene on. So knowing that diabetes began to develop up to 14 years before you're actually diagnosed with it, and it's estimated that there are millions of people in America who are already diabetic and they just don't know. So how do you know whether or not this is something that you should be concerned over? We're going to go fairly quickly. I'm going to try not to make this an hour video, right? Over 10 signs, right? Individually, these signs can mean absolutely nothing. They can mean it refer to a different type of dysfunction, but collectively, they begin to be red flags, and you should be concerned about them. So, number one, feeling hangry and unable to go but long time between meals without that, not just hunger feeling, but hangry, right? We tease and we say, you know what, don't talk to me until I've had something to eat. But in general, that's actually not a good thing. If you not only feel hungry, but you also feel irritable, moody, and it's only solved when you actually eat food, then you should just be conscious of that your body may be trying to tell you something. Not just a hungry feeling, but a hangry feeling. The second thing is, if after you've gone 4 hours and you haven't eaten, and now you're like, oh my God, I finally get something to eat, and then you sit down and you eat a meal, but immediately after you're feeling extremely lethargic and tired, right? In the Black community, we call this the itis. And again, something that is made light of, but certainly can be a red flag if it is coupled with other symptoms, right? So if every time you eat, I'm not just talking about eating because you've had Thanksgiving dinner or you had a huge meal. If you sit down to eat your food and after you eat your food, you're really tired, that is a sign of insulin resistance. Number three, if you've already been diagnosed pre-diabetic, which is insulin resistance, diabetic, which is insulin resistance, PCOS, which is insulin resistance, right? We're going to talk about PCOS in much more detail this week and exactly what it is and the symptoms and signs of PCOS. But for today, if you've already gotten this diagnosis, then you should know that all of those things are hormonal imbalances related to insulin resistance, right? Number four, if you have a difficult time losing weight, even if you're eating low calorie and low fat. This can be a whole live in itself, so I'm not going to get into super, super detail about this, but bottom line is you are not a bank. It is not calories in versus calories out. If it was that simple, then we would not have obesity as an epidemic. But if you have really been trying everything, right? So I was there. I feel you. You watching your calories, you're eating low fat, you're eating whole grains, and you barely make the scale move, then you need to look at not how much you're eating, but what you're actually eating, right? So that is another sign. Again, coupled with other things, these could be red flags. If you're carrying extra weight and most of that weight comes in the form of belly fat, right? We know through research that belly fat is directly related to insulin resistance. That is another sign. If you feel sad and depressed and just eating sugar makes you feel better, right? Again, something that we make light of, which may not necessarily be an alarming thing, but when coupled with other things, when coupled with some of these other symptoms, they could be red flags, right? When you're like literally like, oh my God, I'm so depressed. I must have chocolate. I must have chips. Please go get me some donuts or I'm going to strangle somebody. All of those are signs, okay? They are signs of insulin resistance. If you have, and I posted about this the other day, if you have hyperpigmentation on your cheeks, on your forehead, you're a female and you're starting to grow some chest hairs, you're starting to have lots of hairs in place that men normally grow hair, that is another sign of insulin resistance. That is an imbalance of hormones. Your testosterone may be high. That's also a sign of PCOS, which we're going to talk about later this week. So make sure that you put on your notifications for my posts and my lives, because we are going to get in some detail about PCOS. If you have literally been told by your doctor, hey, let's get an A1C test. Again, I'm going to put a little ding ding as an important note on this one, is an A1C test is a blood test that your doctor gives you, and what it does, it will show the doctor your average insulin level over the past couple of months. Anything above a 5.5 is considered pre-diabetes. And when you get into the sixes, your doctor will officially diagnose you with diabetes. So if you've been told, hey, your A1C is 5.5 or your A1C is 7, obviously you have diabetes and you have insulin resistance. Another sign is that you don't just want carbs, right? Like you literally intensely crave them. I'm not talking about period cravings, right? That's a whole nother issue. I'm talking about like any time of the month. You feel like you absolutely have to have a cookie, have to have pasta, have to have bread, even if it's whole wheat, even if it's brown, right? When you intensely crave juice, I gotta have my smoothie every single morning. I gotta juice 5 carrots, 2 apples, and 3 bananas because that's my morning drink. And if I don't have it, then I'm gonna be cranky, right? That is considered, yes. And let me say, yes, addiction to fruit is also an addiction to sugar. All right. So I'm not talking about just wanting it. I'm talking about like you have intense cravings. You know the difference. And another sign, the 10th sign, is that if you get a full night's sleep and you wake up completely exhausted, that is another sign of insulin resistance. So pay attention to your body. Again, one of these things happening, you're going through a stressful time. You can't really sleep, and you have nothing else going on this list, then you may not have insulin resistance. But if you have 3 or more or 4 of these things that I just mentioned, you need to really start making efforts in your diet, in your lifestyle to eliminate added sugar. That is where you need to start. Eliminate added sugar. If you have 5 or more of these things, you need to make some serious diet and lifestyle changes, right? So you want to make sure that you are paying attention to your body. Our body is a wonderful machine, and it will actually tell us when something is wrong. We just need to listen to it when it speaks to us. We need to stop, pause, pay attention to our body, and respond appropriately, right? So we want to avoid getting to the point where we have to reverse diabetes. And yes, type 2 diabetes is completely reversible. We know this. We know this from diet and lifestyle changes. And something that's like super common, right? That the one way that we know this is when you have, and doctors know this all the time, if you have somebody who is severely obese and they get a gastric bypass surgery and they begin to lose significant amounts of weight and it decreases the amount of food that they're eating, within a couple of months, their doctor is taking them off diabetic medication in many, many cases. So we know that type 2 diabetes can be reversed. You can reverse it with the way that you're eating, significantly reducing carbohydrates, the way that you're moving, right? Everybody wants to say, hey, I'm going to start exercising, so I'm going to walk every day. But if you have diabetes, the best thing that you can do for your diabetes, for your insulin resistance, is actually to do strength training. Strength training is the prescription for insulin resistance. Cardiovascular training is the prescription for high blood pressure, right? So there's a difference. Movement is medicine. It's really important that we understand that we can make significant changes in our health and our healing just by changing what we eat, when we eat, and how we move. Super, super important. So I hope that was a little bit more clarity on, now we're doing reels and we have to fit everything within 1 minute, but I thought that it would not do it justice for me to come to give you a little bit more explanation. So again, if you have 3 of these symptoms, then you should start by eliminating sugar inside of your diet. If you have 5 or more of these symptoms, then you could really benefit from my metabolic coaching program coming up. Go ahead and comment coaching inside of the comments or send me a DM with coaching and I will send you all the details about that. And make sure that you put on notifications and you put on the follow button so that you can be notified when I go live. We're going to talk about PCOS later this week, and we're going to get a little bit more detailed about what exactly do we need to do in order to start reversing insulin resistance right now. All right. So I will talk to you soon. You guys have a great day. Remember to eat and move with intentions. All right. All right. Talk to you soon. Assalamu alaikum.